In a city that swallows boys whole, Malik Wells had no father, no money, and no one betting on his survival. When his mother dies, he's left with nothing but a notebook, a voice he's still learning to trust, and a promise not to become what the world expects of him. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The air in West Baltimore was always heavy, thick with sirens, smoke from corner store fried chicken, and the low hum of struggle. Inside apartment 3B of the Lexington Homes housing complex, Malik was born on a rusted hospital bed that social workers had arranged 2 days before. His mother, Tasha, screamed into the same pillow she used to cry into at night, alone. She was 17, scared, and already hardened by life. There was no father in the room. No man pacing the hallway, waiting to hear the baby's first cry. Just Tasha, her auntie clutching her hand, and the harsh fluorescent light casting shadows on the peeling paint above. The nurse didn't even ask for the father's name. It was already a familiar story. When they handed Malik to her, still slick, small, and wailing, Tasha stared into his brown eyes and whispered, "It's just me and you now." He didn't get a middle name. She hadn't thought that far ahead. She gave him her last name, because there was no one else to give him theirs. No lineage. No legacy. Just Malik. By the time he was 3, Malik had already learned silence. Not the comfortable kind, but the survival kind. He didn't ask where his daddy was. He knew better than to bring that name up. In preschool, when other kids made Father's Day cards, Malik drew a picture of a gold chain and a couch. It was all he knew, Tasha's necklace, the worn seat she fell asleep in after double shifts at the diner. At night, while sirens wailed past their windows and drug deals whispered under the street lamps below, Tasha would pull Malik close and whisper promises she could barely afford to believe in herself. "You gon' be more than this, baby. More than these buildings. More than these streets." She didn't know how or when or if, but she said it anyway, like prayer. And Malik, even then, didn't cry much. He just listened. Even as a toddler, he could feel the weight in her voice, the weight he would inherit. By the time Malik turned 8, the streets had already begun shaping him. Every morning, he walked the cracked sidewalk to PS 47, head down, backpack half-zipped, one eye on the ground and the other on the figures posted at the corner. Men who never went anywhere but somehow always had money. They didn't smile much, didn't age much either, just stood there like statues built from hunger and hustle. Malik didn't want to be them, but he understood them. He'd pass boarded-up homes where windows were replaced with cardboard, the smell of mold drifting out like something alive. He knew which blocks to avoid after dark and how to keep pace without looking nervous. The kids in the neighborhood played freeze tag by day and learned how to freeze for police by night. At school, Malik sat in the back quiet. He wasn't dumb, just tired. Tired of switching off the TV so the electricity wouldn't trip. Tired of eating dinner out of a can while Tasha scraped tips together to buy uniforms. Sometimes the teacher would call on him, and he'd answer with sharpness that made the room pause. Smart kids in broken schools often sounded like echoes, loud for a second, then gone. But there were flashes. When Ms. Jenkins asked them to write about their heroes, Malik didn't pick a celebrity or athlete. He wrote about his mother's hands, how they were cracked from detergent and heat, how they always moved even when she was too tired to speak. The paper was raw, honest. She read it aloud to the class. Malik stared at his desk the whole time, not sure whether to feel proud or exposed. Later that week, a boy named Dante pushed him in the hallway. "Think you better than us now?" he hissed. Malik didn't answer, just picked up his books and walked away, jaw clenched. He learned young. Surviving wasn't about fighting every battle. It was about choosing the ones that mattered and staying alive long enough to fight them. Back home, Tasha had started coughing. Deep, chest-hollowing coughs. She told him it was just a cold, but Malik could tell she was lying. He watched her take longer to get out of bed, move slower around the house. Some nights she didn't cook at all. Some mornings she didn't say much. So Malik started doing more. Cleaning, cooking what he could, helping old Miss Wanda downstairs carry her groceries for a few dollars. He even started sweeping up at the barbershop down the block on Saturdays. Sweeping up stories and stray hairs, learning how men talked, how they carried pain without saying its name. And each night, as the world around him roared and shook, he'd lie in bed next to his mother, counting sirens, holding on to her words like a rope. "You gon' be more than this." Winter came hard that year. The radiators in their building hissed but gave no heat, and the windows let in more wind than light. Malik had grown used to the cold, used to bundling in 2 hoodies and sleeping with his socks on. But nothing prepared him for the day his mama coughed and blood hit the kitchen sink. It wasn't a lot, not at first. Just a splatter. But it sat there like a warning. Tasha wiped it quickly, pretending it didn't happen. "Just a lil' chest cold," she said, her voice too calm, too rehearsed. But she was thinner now, her cheekbones sharper, her steps slower. She stopped working nights, started staying in bed longer. Malik began skipping school more often, telling teachers his mom needed him home. They didn't ask too many questions. Most of them had seen kids grow up faster than they should. One Friday, he came home to find her passed out on the bathroom floor, the water from the sink still running. He called 911 with shaking fingers, voice too steady for a child. He rode in the back of the ambulance, knees bouncing, hands fisted in his hoodie. At the hospital, they used words he didn't understand, lesions, pulmonary late stage, but he understood the looks. Pity is a language even children know. They kept her overnight. Then another night. Medicaid covered some things. Not enough. Tasha came home with an oxygen tank and prescriptions they couldn't afford. Malik took over everything. Cooking, bills, her medications, heating her tea, watching the clock like a nurse. She tried to smile, but her face looked tired even in sleep. One night, as snow gathered on their windowsill and the apartment hummed with silence, Tasha called him to her side. "You're carrying too much, baby," she whispered. Malik blinked back tears. "I'm good, Ma." "No," she said. "You not. But you will be." She took his hand in both of hers, thin, trembling hands that used to be strong enough to lift him up and out of bathtubs and danger. "I need you to promise me something." He nodded. "No matter what happens to me," she said, voice dry as paper. "You keep going. You don't stop. You don't fold. You hear me?" He didn't speak, just squeezed her hand tight, trying to memorize the warmth before it was gone. 3 weeks later, Tasha passed in her sleep. There was no life insurance, no father to call, just Malik, 15, staring at her still body in the same room where she used to sing to him, where she used to dream out loud. He didn't cry at the funeral. Didn't cry when the social worker handed him a pamphlet about shelters. Didn't cry when the landlord taped an eviction notice to the door. But that night, in an abandoned city bus near the edge of Druid Hill Park, with his backpack as a pillow and his mother's Bible clutched to his chest, he finally broke. And then somehow he breathed again. The bus smelled like rust and old rain. But to Malik, it was home now. He slept across the torn back seat, kept a plastic bag of clothes beneath him, and folded his mother's Bible into his chest like armor. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, washed his face at the public park faucet, and hit the streets looking for work. Most people ignored him. He was just another black boy with cracked shoes and tired eyes, someone to be avoided, pitted, or blamed. He walked past storefronts with handwritten, help wanted signs, but no one ever wanted him. He had no resume, no address, no adults to vouch for him. But he kept showing up. Eventually, a mechanic named Big Reggie let him sweep the floor at a rundown garage in Westport. It wasn't legal work, just $10 here and there for hauling tires and cleaning oil spills. But Malik was grateful. The grease on his hands gave him a reason to exist, even for a few hours a day. Still, he carried more than just wrenches and trash. He carried a storm inside him, grief, guilt, rage. At night, under flickering street lamps, he'd scribble into torn composition books. Not just poems, but truths. About his mama. About the way people look through you when you're black, poor, and invisible. About the names he never had, the fathers he never knew, the dreams he buried with her. One day, while delivering a car battery to a nearby shop, he passed a dusty old bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The door was open, and something about it pulled him in. The air inside smelled like old paper and wood polish. The owner, a wiry man with silver locks named Mr. Harmon, looked up from behind the counter. "You lost?" he asked, not unkindly. Malik shook his head. "Just lookin', Dut." Mr. Harmon nodded slowly, then pointed to the poetry shelf. "That's where most lost boys start." Malik spent 2 hours in that store, flipping through Baldwin, Hughes, and Maya Angelou. The words burned hot, like they were speaking from inside his own ribcage. Before he left, Mr. Harmon handed him a small notebook. "No charge," he said, "but write real in it. No lies." Malik did. He started spending every spare minute at the shop. Mr. Harmon let him sweep up in exchange for time and coffee. Some days they didn't talk much. Other days they talked about everything: blackness, books, justice, pain. "You ever think about college?" Mr. Harmon asked once. Malik laughed. "Don't even got a GED." Mr. Harmon raised an eyebrow. "So get one." The idea sounded ridiculous. Malik hadn't been in school for 2 years. He'd missed everything: homework, structure, hope. But the next morning, he found himself sitting at the library, fingers trembling, registering for the GED exam. He started studying at night, reading aloud to himself, reciting facts, scribbling equations and poems side by side in the margins. The grief was still there. The anger too. But now, something new had crept in. Purpose. He had no father. No home. No plan. But for the first time in a long time, Malik had momentum. The GED exam felt like a mountain. Malik sat at a desk in the back of a testing center that smelled like old sweat and floor wax, his pencil tapping like a heartbeat. Around him, other faces stared blankly at the pages, some young, some old, all chasing second chances. The math questions looked like code at first. Numbers danced, taunting him. He paused, closed his eyes, and remembered what Mr. Harmon told him 2 nights before. "The world ain't expecting you to win. That's your weapon. Use that." So he fought, one problem at a time. Words he couldn't pronounce, formulas he barely understood. He wrestled them all onto the page. Malik didn't know if he passed when he walked out, but he knew he hadn't folded. And that meant something. 2 weeks later, the letter came. He passed. No fanfare. No balloons. Just a folded sheet of paper that whispered, "You did it." He showed Mr. Harmon, who nodded like he'd known all along. "Now comes the hard part," the old man said. "Believing you deserve what's next." Malik didn't have much to put on a college application. No awards, no counselors, no family. Just scars, words, and truth. He applied to 6 community colleges, most of them within bus distance. He didn't expect anything. But late one Sunday, while sweeping the back of the bookstore, Mr. Harmon called out, holding up his phone. "You got an email." Malik wiped his hands and read the screen. "Congratulations, Mr. Wells. You've been accepted into Frederick Douglass Community College. Fall semester. English program. Partial scholarship." He stood frozen. No smile. No words. Just shock. Then, quietly, he exhaled the breath he didn't know he was holding. Classes started in September. Malik showed up with a half-dead phone, a second-hand backpack, and the same 3 outfits. He sat in the front row. Listened more than he talked. Some students were fresh out of high school, carefree. Others, like him, carried the world on their backs. He worked nights as a janitor, cleaned offices where suits left behind half-eaten lunches and printouts that cost more than what he made in a week. He kept his textbooks in his mop bucket, studied in stairwells, slept 3 hours a night. But the hunger in him had changed. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was mission. His essays stood out, raw, intelligent, full of pain and precision. Professors began to notice. One, a black woman named Dr. Rhodes, pulled him aside after class. "Your writing doesn't ask for permission," she said. "It just speaks." He blinked. "That's not a compliment," she added. "It's a calling. Don't waste it." Malik nodded slowly, the words sinking deep. For the first time in his life, someone didn't just tell him he was smart. They told him he had a voice. And that was the beginning of everything. By the second semester, Malik was no longer invisible. His professors called on him in class, even when he didn't raise his hand. Other students started asking him to look over their papers before submitting. His name, Malik Wells, started to circulate, softly at first, like a rumor that refused to die. He didn't talk much about his past. He didn't have to. His writing carried the weight for him. Stories about public housing, about the sound of eviction boots on the stairs, about the silence that follows after someone you love is buried too young, too cheap, too soon. He wasn't writing to impress. He was writing to survive. Dr. Rhodes encouraged him to start a blog. At first, he shrugged her off. "What's a blog gonna do?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Change someone's life. Maybe not yours right away, but someone's." So he launched it. The Weight I Carry. The first post was short. A story about standing in line at a food bank, watching a kid pretend he wasn't hungry. The second post? A letter to his mother. By the fifth post, students across campus were sharing it. By the 10th, it reached a local journalist who contacted him for a feature. The story ran with a headline he didn't expect. "From Homeless to Hope, the words of Malik Wells." He hated it at first, felt exposed, like someone had turned him inside out. But then emails started coming. Messages from people who saw themselves in his pain. Teens. Single moms. A teacher in Mississippi. A young man in Chicago. All saying the same thing. "You're telling my story, too." Malik had always believed he was alone in the struggle. Now he knew he wasn't. His voice wasn't just an outlet anymore. It was a bridge. He was still broke. Still tired. Still cleaning offices at 3 a.m. with blistered hands. But inside, something had shifted. He was becoming somebody. One day, Dr. Rhodes slid a recommendation letter across her desk. "You're transferring," she said. "To where?" She grinned. "Where you belong." The envelope came in spring. Thick. Sealed with a blue crest. Howard University. Accepted. Full transfer. Partial scholarship. He read the letter 3 times before he believed it. Then he walked to Mr. Harmon's bookstore and stood in front of the man who first handed him a notebook when no one else had offered him anything. "I'm leaving this fall," Malik said. "Howard." Mr. Harmon didn't speak at first. Just nodded slow. "You ever wonder," he said, "how many boys like you never get a second chapter?" "Every day," Malik replied. "Then make this one count." That fall, as he stepped onto Howard's campus, with stone buildings that stood like monuments and voices all around that sounded like power, Malik felt a strange sensation. Not fear. Not pride. Responsibility. He wasn't just climbing out anymore. He was carrying names with him. Howard felt like another planet. Red brick buildings stood proud beneath the DC sky, and the students walked like they belonged, with style, with ease, with a confidence Malik had never worn. Some pulled up in luxury cars. Others wore designer backpacks and debated social theory over cold brew and Wi-Fi. Malik didn't talk much at first. He studied them the way he once studied the streets, quietly, cautiously learning the code. He didn't own a laptop. He wrote his essays in the library until closing, his fingers dancing over borrowed keyboards like they were playing for his life. His shoes were cracked. His coat too thin for DC winters. But he had something many didn't, clarity. He wasn't here for status. He was here for purpose. In his 3rd semester, he declared a double major, journalism and African American studies. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. He dove into research about generational trauma, mass incarceration, the war on Black fatherhood. Every paper he wrote felt like carving a name into stone, his own and those of the boys the system tried to erase. He gave talks on youth homelessness. He started guest blogging for a national Black media outlet. One day, he got a call from a youth center in Southeast DC. "We read your work," the woman said. "Would you speak to our young men?" He didn't hesitate. That day, he stood before a room of teenage boys, most of them slouched in chairs, their eyes bored or blank. But as he spoke, about sleeping in buses, about his mother's final breath, about how it feels to walk into a room and believe you don't deserve to be there, something shifted. Heads lifted. Eyes focused. One kid in the back whispered, "Yo, he talking about me." When it ended, a boy no older than 14 came up and said, "I ain't never met nobody like me who made it out." Malik didn't flinch. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I didn't make it out," he said. "I'm still making it through. Every day. And so can you." That moment lit a fire. Malik launched an initiative called Sons Without Fathers, a mentorship collective for Black boys navigating life without male role models. He raised money through crowdfunding, partnered with local schools, and wrote grants late into the night. What started with 5 boys grew to 20, then 50. He trained mentors, hosted workshops, brought in barbers, teachers, and returning citizens to talk about pain, healing, and Black manhood. He didn't preach. He listened. He told the truth. And the truth in his voice sounded like possibility. By graduation, Malik was more than just a student. He was a name in rooms he never dreamed of entering. When he walked across the stage in his cap and gown, the crowd rose for him like a tide. No mother in the stands. No father in the wings. But hundreds of voices cheering as if they'd always known he'd be something. He held the diploma in his hands and thought, "This isn't just mine. It belonged to every boy still waiting to be seen." 10 years after his mother died in that cold apartment, Malik stood in the middle of that same neighborhood. Except it didn't look the same. Where abandoned buildings once stood, there was now a community center, bright brick, clean windows, kids laughing in the courtyard. The sign above the door read, "The Tasha Wells Learning Center." He had saved for years. Crowdfunded. Written proposal after proposal. Every rejection letter only sharpened his resolve. He named it after the woman who had given him everything with nothing. Now it was real. Inside, boys sat at desks with computers. Girls recited poetry into microphones. There was a library with the books Mr. Harmon once handed him. There was a kitchen with hot food, a counselor's office, a GED prep room, and on the wall near the entrance, painted in bold black letters, "You are not where you come from. You are what you become." That day, Malik stood at a podium in the courtyard. He wore a plain black suit. No tie. Just a lapel pin with his mother's initials. Dozens of young people sat before him. Some with braids. Some with scars. All with eyes that held both defiance and hope. He looked out over them, not as a teacher or a savior or a hero, but as one of them. "I grew up a few blocks from here," he began. "No father. No money. A mother who died before I could make her proud. I slept in a bus once. Ate out of vending machines. People saw me as a statistic or didn't see me at all." A pause. Silence. Breath. "But here's the thing. The world will put a label on you before it learns your name. You have to choose whether that label sticks." He stepped down from the podium and into the crowd, speaking now not from a script, but from the gut. "I didn't have a father to guide me, so I became the man I needed. I didn't have a home, so I built one for all of us. And I'm telling you right now, you don't have to be born lucky to matter. You just have to decide you're not done." After the ceremony, a boy about 12 walked up to him. "You really lived in a bus?" he asked. Malik smiled. "Yeah, I still got the seatbelt marks in my back." The boy grinned, then looked down. "You think someone like me could ever get out?" Malik didn't answer right away. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn notebook, the first one Mr. Harmon had given him years ago. He handed it to the boy. "Don't get out," he said. "Get through, and then come back." That night, Malik walked home through the same streets that once nearly swallowed him whole. But this time they felt different, because now his name carried weight. Not the kind that crushes, the kind that lifts.